Drugs do not discriminate. They impact people in all walks of life, all over our country. People that you may have never thought would be impacted by this are being impacted by it. You know, your neighbors, whether that's somebody they know or somebody that they know or somebody at work, it impacts people in all walks of life. And as we watch this and see some of these survivors who have been addicted to drugs, you notice that it's really hard for them to talk about, because this is not something that they wanted. They didn't think that, you know, taking this one time that they would then become addicted to this. This is not something that as a child they looked and said, you know what, when I grow up, I want to be addicted to drugs. None of them want this. All of them want out of it, but it's so hard. That's why it's so important for these educational events to educate people about what this does, how easy it is to get caught up in it, and to also let people know what's out there to help them. There's several organizations in our community, several professionals in our community that's exactly why they're here. They want to help people suffering with this or going through this, or families that are going through this, just to provide support and education. So with that, we do have a group of panelists here that's exactly what they do. Their goal is to educate, whether that's, you know, law enforcement or coalitions that are out there helping people right now dealing with addiction, or families dealing with addiction. So Paul DeMarco is actually here. He's going to moderate this portion of it. But before he comes up here, I would like to kind of tell you a little bit more about him. Paul DeMarco has spent years serving citizens of Central Alabama in many different roles. In 2005, Paul DeMarco was elected in a special election to the Alabama House of Representatives, where he represented portions of South Jefferson County. As a judiciary chairman, he was recognized for his support of prosecutors and law enforcement. In 2013, he was the recipient of the Legislative Leadership Award of Alabama Crime Victims Commission, for Alabama's Crime Victims Commission. He serves as the president currently of the Mid-Alabama Republican Club and on the executive committee of the Jefferson County Republican Party. So he has also been heard on both television, I'm sure you've seen him on WBRC around election time, and radio regarding political commentary. He also writes a regular commentary on Alabama state government and politics. So with further ado, Paul DeMarco, who would like to come up here. He's going to introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Hannah, so much. A lot to unpack from all that. And let's just start off with this before I introduce my, oops, that matter covenant, right? Thank y'all for being here. Let me just say that you're taking time away from work and family, and we can show all the videos in the world and we can have this panel discussion, but if you're not here, it doesn't matter what any of us do or what any elected official does, or police or prosecutors. So thank y'all for taking the time to be here. So we're going to respect your time, and it's about 7:15, and we said we'd be out of here by 8 o'clock, but you know, you see something like that, and you're like, now what? So I'm hopeful that you'll have some takeaways, and that's the most important thing we're about to do right now, is have a very astute panel of folks who are very familiar with what's going on, both nationally and most importantly, here in Alabama. So I'm going to introduce them, and we're going to get right on it, and we've got some questions, but we're going to open it up to you as well. If you have any questions, and then Hannah has got this on Facebook Live as well, is that correct? And so there may be some questions that come from some of the viewers that are watching that. So as I introduce you, if you'll come up, and we'll go over there. First, we've got FBI Agent Todd Bobby, who is with us. Next, we've got the Executive Director of the Beacon Recovery, John Dantzler. Next, we've got the Executive Director of Unbound Grace Ministry and Recovering Addict, John Stapley. Next, the Executive Director of the Addiction Prevention Coalition, who's also an elected official himself, Mike Vest. And then finally here in Shelby County, the Executive Director of Compact 2020, as well as the Commander of the Shelby County Drug Enforcement Task Force, Clay Hammond. You'll give them a round of applause. So I'm going to ask some questions of these gentlemen, but also, again, if you have a question that's relevant to what we just saw, and that would be helpful to everybody else, let me know and I'll come ask that question of you. But let's just get straight to the point here. Let's start off. You know, this obviously was from a national perspective, and it was giving national statistics of what's going on with the problems here nationally. But let's talk about here in Alabama. I think I saw there were 44 drug overdoses nationally every day. So, Todd, you know, from a perspective, you're based here in Alabama, correct? And yet each of y'all get the microphone, make sure it's on. Push that. Can you hear me now? Did you push the button? Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's start off with here in Alabama. Let's bring the statistics back home here to Alabama. What are we seeing here in Alabama when it comes to this?
So as far as the FBI is concerned, this is part of, we kind of have two folds here. One is our interaction with healthcare fraud cases. So that goes over, involves the doctor is doing pill mills, overly prescribing drugs when they're not supposed to be. The other would be with our gang task forces, Safe Streets task forces. So, and that's a lot of the drug dealers, whether they be neighborhood-based gangs, which is what we mostly have here, not really the nationally gangs like your Crips or anything like that, but even the neighborhood-based gangs involved in distributing heroin, fentanyl, and other drugs, methamphetamine. That's primarily what we're seeing here.
Clay, what about here in Shelby County, South Jefferson, the central Alabama region? What are you saying?
Yeah, well, let me break it home. The single greatest threat that we see in our criminal justice system as far as, so I think it's fair to say that the greatest threat that we have in our criminal justice system is hands down, drug addiction and dependency. I think it's safe for us to say that we not only have a number of property crimes and violent crimes that are indirectly linked to opioid addiction or other illicit drug addictions, but it also lends itself to violent crimes. To answer your question more specifically, I think since the first of the year, January 1st, 2019, we have had nearly a dozen or more fatal opioid overdoses that are directly linked to heroin or heroin-laced drug addiction.
Mike and John, from your colleagues around the country, obviously y'all are here in Alabama, but obviously you talk to folks from around the country. What is Alabama problem worse or less worse than other states, or is it different than other states, or is it similar to what we saw in the video?
Sir?
We have a microphone issue.
I'll just speak loudly. How about that? You can hear it. You can hear me. Good. Certainly we have. Okay, we have problems, of course, and in some cases in Alabama we are pretty bad. I'm sure the FBI can give us the statistics, but Walker County, for instance, the last I saw it was number 4 in terms of opioid use in the country. And that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. And we have sections of Alabama that aren't as bad. So I don't want to say if we're worse or better, but we're not good. How about that? But there are some good things going on. And we can talk about that in a minute. But there's some good things in terms of treatment. There are good things in terms of the money coming from the federal government and from the state that allows us to treat individuals with opioid use disorder. So we can talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. Before we do that, get into the treatment and so forth. So we talked about where we are in Alabama and central Alabama. But one of the main themes of this video, at least that I saw, and I don't know if you were watching, in between the videos, there was some of the data, and it was talking about where folks got started to this addiction. And a lot of the common denominator was alcohol and marijuana. So that's what we saw in the video. Is that what you're seeing here in Alabama? You know, there's a lot of discussion of gateway drugs. We hear about it all the time. So, what is myth, separating between myth and fact when it comes to what is the gateway to the issues that we're seeing with the addiction and the overdoses? We'll start here with Clay.
So an uncomfortable truth is that there are indeed gateway drugs that exist. Let me just turn this off and speak loudly. There are gateway drugs, and those gateway drugs can take all kinds of shapes and forms. It can be alcohol, it can be cigarettes, but more commonly what we see in drug enforcement and narcotics investigations is it usually begins with marijuana. And so we have a social norming that seems to be taking place across our country, specifically recently within this newest generation, that marijuana is harmless. If anything, marijuana, many would argue, is medicinal. But let me tell you that of the drug offenders, drug traffickers that my team arrests and put in prison, if we were to bring 10 of the worst out here and stand them in front of you and ask them, I think it's a pretty fair assumption to say that probably 9 out of those 10 would tell you that they started with simple marijuana and alcohol, of course. So yes, there is a gateway nexus to this lifestyle.
Mike, is that what you kind of seen from the Addiction Coalition?
We have seen a lot of things. We see people before they get on drugs. We see people after they get on drugs. We're a prevention and awareness program that calls it, hey, I need some help. I can't afford, I don't have any insurance, but can you help me get somewhere? And we'll help them get somewhere. We also have a table out there. If you guys need any educational items, feel free to grab them as you go out. I'm a product of this. People say, well, the boys start at 10 and the girls start at 12. That's what they're saying right now as far as smoking marijuana. Well, that happened 40 years ago. It's not today. So they keep saying that, but that was 40 years ago because my brother tried his first marijuana at 10 years old, and I found him downtown in Birmingham in 2010, walking the street, 35 years addicted on crack and crystal meth. Found my father behind the Southern Museum of Flight in 2005, sleeping in his car for 13 years because he's an alcoholic. Found my nephew under a bridge in Nashville, Tennessee, 2 years ago. So I'm a product of all this. So it doesn't matter what they're saying about this is just now happening. No, it's happening now. I mean, it happened 40 years ago when we were kids. My brother quit school in the 9th grade, 10th grade when he was 16 years old, and then it was all over. But marijuana was prevalent around that neighborhood in the western part of Birmingham. And that's where it all got started. So I'm a big believer in marijuana being a gateway drug.
John, you guys?
Well, I think marijuana is a gateway. I think that if you abuse, there's a lot of different gateways, but something that gets a man and gets them headed towards that road of addiction, that cycle of addiction. And I think it also starts with everybody thinks they're the exception to the rule. I can smoke marijuana a little bit, or I can take my parents' opioids, and because they're the exception, it's never an addiction until they're one of these videos we're watching here.
You want to add to that about gateways?
I'd like to add that. The research shows that there is a strong correlation between early use of marijuana and alcohol and later use of harder drugs. Now, let me put that in perspective, however. Correlation, as you know, is not necessarily causation. So we have to be careful saying this causes that. However, it is important to know that if a child, if an adolescent is using marijuana or drinking, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and help them with treatment early on. Because there is a correlation there. We don't know what the causing factors are, but there is some connection. That's what we know from research.
Do you find that it's folks that start younger when they're teens, or folks that could be 20 or 30, 40, or 50? Or is there a certain age when folks are getting addicted, or is it at all age levels?
Again, research shows that around 80%, 70 to 80% of individuals who eventually become addicted to opioids started under the age of 25. Quite a large, we saw a similar statistic on the screen. So, yeah, with young kids, adolescents, are going to be more likely to use that opioid and become addicted. However, that doesn't mean you can't at 30, 40, 50, 60. We see that too.
Agent Moby, we talked about the gateway drugs, talked about marijuana, that was mentioned in the video. What about the prescriptions, we talked a lot about that. What prescriptions are you seeing where the problems are, and what are they being prescribed for?
Well, everybody probably has their own, you go to the doctor for a visit. I know I went and had a infection in my finger one time when I was stationed out in San Diego. And, just a quick incision and drainage, no big deal. And I got 30 pills of Oxycontin just for that. Not saying that all doctors, it's kind of like every other profession. Not all doctors are bad. So, but it is those that are overusing the prescription. A lot of times, medical professionals will treat the symptoms and not the problems. And then, you have what you may hear of pain management doctors. I'm sure there's some great ones out there. But folks who are just, the doctors, medical professionals who are just, prescribing medicine unnecessarily. There's also, and I believe my DEA counterparts would probably have a little bit more to say about this, we've got to do something as, a nation to where it's not as easy for folks to get, prescription medicine. I was a cop in my prior life, prior to getting the FBI. We would have folks even then, back 16, 17 years ago, say, oh, I lost my prescription medicine, I need to file a police report so I can go get more. Knowing good and well that more than likely they're selling it on the inside or selling it, and Clay can probably talk more about that. But for us, it's probably the higher doses or the stronger medication that's being prescribed rather than something, hey, here's 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, that should get you by for a little bit. If you need more, let me know.
What specific drugs are we seeing here in Central Alabama, do you think, from a prescription that are being used?
Yeah, so we see a lot of different pain relief type prescription drugs being abused, but probably more commonly than not is Oxycontin. For a short while, whenever we saw that the prescriptions were being altered into a time release, they weren't getting the addict or the abuser high quick enough. So we saw a transition back to the old Norcos, hydrocodone. But now we see that there's continuing to be this evolution back to the expensive prescription pills. But we have found that heroin seems to be more readily available than the prescription pills on the street. Our undercover narcotics investigators are finding heroin a lot more accessible than prescription pills. So you can imagine the transition that someone who is genuinely struggling with addiction goes through. They have this sickness, we call it being dope sick in this profession, and they know what can cure that sickness. But it is so hard and so expensive to get a hold of the prescription pills, but it's so readily available to find street-level heroin, and significantly cheaper. So that is how we see this transition on the street from pills to heroin, pills to needles, very quickly.
We're going to get to the heroin in a little bit, but guys, in the middle, when it comes to, again, the prescriptions, I know there's fentanyl, there's the oxycodone. For the audience here that goes to the doctor that may have, whether it's a kidney stone or something with a lot of pain, what questions do they need to ask of their physicians about these drugs that are prescribed every day? And I think we'd say are part of what is needed when somebody does have a lot of pain, whether it's somebody who's going through a disease that they need to relieve legitimate pain. John, you want to start?
Sure. Chronic pain, you're going to need something. And that's a problem. What I would say is if you have a wisdom tooth extracted, you may get 30-day supply. You don't need 1 day. And I'm not a medical doctor, but I can tell you, you don't need that 1 day problem. I would be very careful treating temporary pain with the opioids that you're prescribed. Now, again, be honest, talk to your physician about this. Say you may have some fears, if you want to be careful, is there a non-opioid alternative? That's what I would suggest. Now I want to say one other thing about that. How many of you, don't raise your hand, how many of you have a bottle that you saved in the cabinet that you got after a dental procedure or something? I know I have in the past. I might need this one day. You don't need it. You don't. There are ways to get rid of that. Please get rid of that. One of the statistics we saw is that most people start to go, they get it from their house, get it from mom, get it from grandma, and start using those pills. Get rid of them. Don't flush them, by the way. There are where you can go to the pharmacist, there's a bag you can get that you put the pills in the bag and put some water that destroys them. Or I know at CVS there's a drop box, I believe. So that would be my advice. If it's temporary pain and you can handle Tylenol and ibuprofen, do that. If you have chronic pain, that's a conversation with your pain doctor. Just be careful.
John Stakely, I'll ask you, and I'll follow with Todd. So what are policy makers in the legislature and Congress supposed to do to weigh the balance between making sure that those who need pain medications are getting it versus trying to stem what is going on with these issues?
Well, I think John Danforth would probably be better answering this question than I would, but, I mean, be open and talk about it. You know, have the conversation at this level, and then it can work its way up to the people that help make the policies and decisions.
I agree. We need to have more conversations with our legislators.
Well,
So what's
So that's the question, because this Alabama legislature, working in conjunction with doctors and pharmacists, have put policies in place in the past 3-4 years dealing with opioids. Are we seeing any difference in some of those, Clay?
I'm so glad you asked that question. So yeah, we have seen a difference as far as vested partners coming to the table to share communication, share information. But let me take a very bold stance here in saying that we are not going to legislate ourselves into sobriety or recovery. There are no magic laws that we can pass that's going to eliminate this problem for us. What it's going to take is a community partnership, sharing information, coming to the table, everyone who has a vested interest in this, which is everyone in our community. So that is something I think that is worth celebrating in Montgomery, is our lawmakers have been listening to us. They have been listening to their constituents and the families that have gone through this very real and present pain. So we're grateful for that. But let's be very careful not to find this as a crutch to lean on our lawmakers to solve this problem. This is a community problem that we have to take ownership of and correct this course.
Well, I want to comment, for example, Blue Cross. I'm a physician, so will only fill a prescription for acute pain medicine for 5 days. So, I mean, I know that doesn't negate other sources, but there's not going to be a 30 days supply of, I know that's my point, that, so there are changes. In fact, didn't Alabama's prescription, the number of opiates written go down in 2018?
I don't have those numbers, but I'll look
I'm pretty sure
so.
it did.
John?
They get
Yeah,
right back.
yeah. We're trying.
Right, you bring up,
What now?
I said, we were the leader of the pack.
we were.
Mississippi is now.
I know, but I mean, I'm just saying, we were up there.
But you're saying the legislation, what the state has done has reduced it.
Well,
And that-
I doubt that, but altogether.
So one of the issues that we see, and I'd love to hear your take on this, is that it's wonderful to have the laws that restrict the number of pills that can be prescribed. But for people with chronic pain, that's causing a problem, it seems, that they're then going to the streets or someone else to get that medication because they desperately need it. So there has to be some middle ground. I'm going to go, you can't legislate yourself out of this. There has to be some thoughtful way to deal with chronic pain.
Well, and you transition to the next issue, which is we hear about prescriptions, but what is coming from being prescribed and what's coming from the streets? And any of you that want to answer that.
Well, I'm going to talk about, we're in 12 different schools in our peer-to-peer groups with the Addiction Prevention Coalition, all the way from the Alabama School of Fine Arts to Jackson Owen High School, from Mountain Brook to Carver High School. Each area has their different drugs of choice. Jackson Owen High School is not going to be like Vestavia. be crack and crystal meth in Woodlawn. There may be opioids in Mountain Brook. So everybody has their own region of drugs. It's not the same one. Not everybody's doing the same drugs in there in the same area. Is what I'm trying to say.
Is it coming from acquaintances or friends or prescriptions or the street?
Well,
Or a combination of everything?
you also have to remember that a lot of the adolescents who are getting addicted to opioids right now is because of the wisdom teeth taken out. Or a middle school kid getting hurt in the volleyball game, and she goes and gets her shoulder fixed, and now she's addicted to opioids because, you know, it's a disease, y'all. And y'all say, well, no, it's the drug addict's choice. Y'all, it's a disease. It's like diabetes. You do not choose to eat that piece of fried chicken and get your foot cut off because you have diabetes. It's a disease just like diabetes. It's a disease just like cholesterol, high cholesterol. So we've got to fight the disease and educate. That's what we're here for, is to educate people. Say, hey, this is a disease now, and we've got to treat it like a disease.
Our law enforcement officers, Todd Clay, again, prescriptions versus the street versus a parent or an acquaintance. Is there kind of a breakdown percentage-wise of where folks are getting addicted, where this is coming from when it comes to prescription drugs, opioids?
Yes, I think it's very easy to answer that question, that we do have students that are starting, and I said students, high school age kids, that are starting with utilizing prescription pills that either friends give them or that they obtain through a physician or some kind of medical treatment, or they're checking mom and dad's or grandpa's medicine cabinet. So here is the greatest source of credible information for a high school student, their peers. So if their friends come up to them and hand them something and say, this will make you feel a lot better, or this will solve all your problems, they're going to believe that. And I think where we are failing as parents is we're not standing in that gap with good, solid, credible, authoritative information and preparing our students for that encounter long before it happens. So yes, we do see this addiction starting at a very early age, and I can speak specifically to Shelby County and Jefferson County that it is around prescription pills.
Todd, from a national or state perspective, federal laws versus state laws, or in which y'all are prosecuting or seeing, again, the street, prescriptions, friends, acquaintances, what are you seeing as the problems that y'all are having to follow and prosecute?
Well, we're going after both forks. So, and when it comes to the gangs who are distributing, these drugs, we're not just looking at that particular crime because, as Clay mentioned earlier, there's a lot of crime associated with just the drugs. We have shootings, murders, robberies, carjackings, you name it. A lot of it does center around the drugs and the ability of the gangs to make money. So we're focusing that with our Safe Streets Task Forces, which is partnerships with every agency you could imagine in Birmingham and North Alabama area. On the other side of the house, we are part of the Birmingham FBI office along with the Memphis office and the Knoxville office. We're part of the Appalachian Regional Prescription Opioid Task Force, called ARPO. ARPO is a lot easier to say than all those words. And we're going after the doctors who are the most egregious. Now, when I say the most egregious, I am talking the most egregious. There's usually a top 5, top 10 list that we have of the doctors, and there's no middle ground really. You have the doctors who are doing what they're supposed to do, what they sworn, do no harm, trying to make people better, and then you have those that are 10 times, 100 times more prescribing these opiates. And those are what we're calling the pill mills. So our pill mill doctors, a lot of them are in the rural areas, which was mentioned earlier, because our resources don't really hit the rural areas as much as they should, because we're focused on, a lot of the majority of stuff here. But a lot of the doctors, it's not just them just prescribing an excessive amount of drugs. They're doing other bad things as well. So, and we do have, I would probably fair to say, I'm not going to tell you the number because I'd have to kill you all. But we do have some very significant investigations. We're talking about doctors who are engaged in prostitution, they're engaged in child pornography. These are the worst of the worst that we are going after. So when you hear me talk about, when you hear us talk about, hey, these doctors are bad that are doing it, we're talking about the most egregious doctors. People who you would think, you know, this person went to a 4-year school and then medical school and then their residency, and they're throwing it all away for this. So whether they get addicted to the drugs themselves or they get addicted to some other bad stuff, we're going after both of them.
Thank you. Hannah, do you have a question from our folks who are watching on Facebook Live?
Yes, one of them is how are you getting the attention of those who are addicted to drugs? And then we have one more after.
So how are you, I guess the question is, how are you getting the attention to get help?
Yeah,
I can answer that. Thank you for asking. We're an awareness and prevention organization, and we own and manage the Heroin Birmingham Walk that was at Railroad Park this last February. We've done for 3 years in a row. 3,500 people showed up at Railroad Park for that walk. 4,000 showed up last year. We just want to bring awareness, prevention, and make it a positive experience and say, hey, it's okay. We're not judging you. We want you to be here. Vestavia's mayor is doing something. He's saying if you are on drugs and you have needles and pills and you won't get help, come to our police station or come to our fire station. You will not be arrested. Walker County's doing the same thing. You're not going to be arrested. We want to help you. We're not going to put you in jail. We're going to find help for you. And that's what we want to do is try to bring awareness to the, especially the heroin walk. Come on out and join us.
I want to get to the next question, but let's real quick, because so we all kind of unfold this issue about heroin versus opioids. What is the characteristics? What's the differences? How does someone go from a marijuana to opioid to a heroin? Anybody want to hit that?
Anybody want to jump in? There's essentially no difference. I mean, in terms of the opioids, they operate the same way. How do you go from one to the other? Well, you don't start shooting heroin. And as they said in the film, you don't start shooting heroin. You start with pain pills. And then you go to the street because you can't get any more. And it costs about, I don't know, you guys can tell me, I think it's about $1 a milligram right now on the streets. So you start doing that. And then you get to about a 10-pill a day habit, and that's $100 a day. So your dealer says, look, I can get you a 10th of a gram back for $20. And you can get so many shots out of this. So that's how you get there. You don't say, hey, you know what I want to do? Bam, I want to shoot up heroin. So that's how you get there. But they operate the same way in the brain.
The line that really stuck out in that whole thing was, you trust your drug dealer. I mean, that was the one line that stuck out in the whole thing. You trust your drug dealer. And then it got into about the heroin being cut with different aspects. Is that where you see what's going on with some of the dangers? Is it, you want to address that, Clay?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to open this door. So my local drug enforcement unit is working with the U.S. Attorney's Office to seek aggressive charges against drug dealers. Listen, jail is no place for the addict, someone who's struggling with addiction. We'd much rather lend themselves to recovery efforts. But the drug dealer, unapologetically, we want to kick that door in and put them in prison for a very long time. They're preying upon the addiction of this person and destroying families. But let me just share with you the mindset of some of the addicts that we come in contact with in my profession. For example, we have a drug dealer who is responsible for an area overdose. And drug addicts know that dope is what killed so-and-so. And that dope came from this drug dealer. You would assume that his business would dry up. Instead, people are beating his door down. Hey, I want the hot dope that killed so-and-so. They want to get as close to the edge of death as possible. The more intense that high is, and it puts them near the edge of death, then that is what they're seeking. So there is an act of desperation there in many cases. That is no place for you to send. That's not the individual that we want to send to jail. We want to put that person in a recovery and treatment program, a diversion program in which they can identify that they need help. The dealer, absolutely, they belong in prison, and we want to put them there for a long time.
Mike and Don, are you seeing more heroin or opioids, or is it same amount of folks that are seeking help?
I use Dr. Dantzler a lot for when people call us on the phone and say, hey, I need help. you know, and I reach out to Dr. Dancer, because he's one of the best in the business of helping and being a psychiatrist and helping these folks find where they need to go. So we're here mostly when phone calls, I say heroin. It has nothing to do with opioids.
Yeah, prescription versus absolutely, it's all the same. Thank you, I'm not a psychiatrist.
Playground TV.
I appreciate it. I do work for UAB Psychiatry. Yeah, the question is, are we seeing one more than the other? By the time they get to us, heroin. You know, we do see people use pills, but as the good doctor said, it's all the same. It's all the same. One is absolutely 100% illegal. The other is legal in a bottle until it gets on the street. It doesn't matter.
I see about half and half, but again, that's all the problem.
We have another question.
Yes, one viewer said, I've heard that 1 in 6 people who used to be on medication for chronic pain are now committing suicide because they can no longer get out of pain. Is that true?
I don't know about the 1 in 6, but I know that there's a lot of despair surrounding chronic pain and the lack of the availability of the opioids. Going back to a previous comment I had, I think that we have to figure something out, something in between. There are people who live with pain every day, and if we just cut them off, despair does some really bad things.
Well, I think that's one of the questions policymakers are trying to weigh. Again, how do you find that balance between trying to handle the problem as well, but at the same time allowing doctors to do what they need to do to treat pain? So, what are the recommendations, or what can the public do when it comes to these issues? I mean, we can have these forums, we can show the videos and so forth. Mike, I know you are trying to get out there. Is awareness part of it? You know, from either a sibling or a parent or a friend.
Well, Compact 2020 here in Shelby County is doing a phenomenal job bringing the awareness across 808 square miles of Shelby County. Number one, where with the addiction prevention coalition, education is the number one thing. If we can start upstream in the elementary schools. Now, I'm not saying it's too late in the high schools that we're in right now. Matter of fact, we're in elementary school this year and in the middle school in Birmingham City. So we're trying to get upstream and educate the students, but a lot of times the parents don't even understand, about it. They don't understand, that my son was taking 10 days of opioids or wisdom tooth when he or she should have been taking 2 or 3, and then more Tylenol, more ibuprofen, more Tylenol, more ibuprofen. So we want to educate, and I believe education is a huge, and awareness as well.
Yes, you want to add to that?
Well, I'm a graduate. I'm the token addict up here, but I'm a graduate of the UAB program, and I think going to recovery, but how you get there is a tough thing also. I had a group of friends around me that saw the destruction in my life, and I kind of let them into that a little bit. And I cracked the door open and they jumped in and threw me off the UAB. So I think there's a level of vulnerability that we all have to share, but also without the judgment, a safe place to help the person. And we'd love to all be on the prevention side, but the reality is sometimes we need to get with them down and dirty to the problem.
Well, John, if there's somebody here or somebody watching that does have a family member or a friend or a coworker, what can you tell them tonight? Say, in every situation is different, to help them help the person they know take a situation that you were in to where you are now. Where can folks find these resources? I mean, they're just sitting here right now. They want to go home, like, okay, they describe my situation.
You walk right out there and get one of those cards off of our table that have all kind of resource phone numbers, from the Recovery Resource Center to UAB Vegan Recovery to the UAB Addictions Program. There's all kind of resources out there. Alabama Department of Mental Health has resources, and et cetera. So there's a lot of ways that you can find resources. If you want them, they're out there. And feel free to reach out to any of us. We want to help. We're not judging.
We're taking questions live, but does anybody have any questions as well?
So you talked about mental health.
Hang on, let me, so they can hear you.
Like you mentioned, mental health, just to piggyback off of that. Dr. D, I used to work for UAB in the early 2000s, and one of the biggest problems in my caseload was dual diagnosis and comorbidity. And we have such a horrible mental health system in the state of Alabama. Do you still find dual diagnosis being a big problem?
Yes. That's a huge problem. Okay, yes.
Yes, that's a problem.
Yes, that's a problem. So one of the
Explain what
dual diagnosis, mental health and substance abuse issues together. We know that if you have a mental health diagnosis, a mental illness, you are more likely to also have a substance use issue. So the two go hand in hand. That's one thing we try to do at Beacon Recovery. We are connected, of course, we are part of UAB Psychiatry. We have psychiatrists, we have primary care doctors, we have counselors, of course. We try to treat the entire individual. But if you have somebody who is self-medicating, using the substance for their schizophrenia, for instance, that's a problem. We got to treat the schizophrenia, and then we can treat the substance issue. So, quick answer, yep, it's a problem.
Thank you for your question. What are other questions somebody have before we go back online? Yes, sir, let me bring the microphone so everybody here can hear your question.
Thank you. I think we discussed opiates a lot, but there's also a huge benzo epidemic that I'm sure y'all have seen. Can y'all discuss the benzo epidemic and how it compares or contrasts to the opioid epidemic?
Yeah, I'd like to take that question. Probably one of the largest number of unintentional overdoses that we see, and I think that's probably the proper way of saying it. Unintentional overdoses happen to do with benzo.
Why don't we just describe, because not everybody knows what benzos is, what class of drugs benzos is, and what
I'd like to yield to one of the medical professionals. I'm just a cop.
There are medications for anxiety, like Ativan, Xanax,
Okay.
So what we see in narcotics enforcement is, well, first of all, I go back to this argument of social norming. There seems to be this impression that if it comes from a doctor, it's safe, it can't hurt you. And we see kind of a celebration over just the casual use of a Xanax, for example. It has become such common language to, if you're stressed out or have high anxiety, you just take a Xanax. Well, when I say unintentional overdoses, we have folks who are casually using Xanax that are rightfully so prescribed this medication under the care of a physician, but mixing that with other drugs, other medications, or in some cases, even alcohol. Benzos and alcohol equals this, no question about it.
I mean, I didn't hear much about this, but overdoses are rarely just one thing. They're usually substances of overdose.
You can see some of the stars that have passed away, look at their medical records, and you'll see 4 or 5 different medications.
Yeah, so it's not like you talk about marijuana and alcohol, they're not separate things.
Okay.
Mike, you said you were at some schools, high schools, middle schools. Is there any kind of success rate at a certain age of educating these kids?
Y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if we can keep our youth up to the age of 21 from really getting addicted to drugs, there's a monster chance, positive chance that they'll never be addicted. So that's why we're here educating them now at an early age to say, we're not trying to scare you. This isn't your brain, this isn't your brain on drugs, it's a fried egg thing. That's not, kids don't want that. They want facts. That's all they want. If you can tell them the true facts about drugs and alcohol and nicotine and Julie, they're going to listen to you.
I'm going to call a question.
Yeah, this is kind of I'm going to kind of combine two questions. Kind of what recovery programs are available for those who have no money, no insurance that they can get help with. Then also, what are lawmakers doing to kind of fund those programs for those who maybe don't have the money to pay? What are they doing to fund them?
With the Inherent Birmingham law that we have, we raise money to help people get scholarship into the Fellowship House and World Exit. So that's why we did this, is to help people. But I know that UAB Beacon Recovery Program also does very, very inexpensive treatment at zero cost.
Right. So Beacon Recovery is one of a few Department of Mental Health recovery organizations in Jefferson County. We're the largest outpatient provider. If you have no money, and most of the time, if you're at a certain stage in addiction, you have no money, and you have no insurance, and you can't go to Bradford, by the way, a wonderful group, or addiction recovery program, you come to us. You go to Fellowship House, you go to Alethea House, other Department of Mental Health funded agencies. You come to us, or any of those others, you can have a free assessment, and that assessment will tell you what level of care you need. You may need, or the person who is going may need residential care. They may need day treatment. They may need intensive outpatient. Only where you need to go. But as a Department of Mental Health funded organization, it is our duty to provide treatment regardless of ability to pay. And we do have a sliding scale. The highest end of that scale is $100. Most people pay zero.
And there's funding coming from both federal as well as the state funding these programs, and the state budget as well as federal budgets. So we've got a few minutes left, as we want to respect your time because it's 4 more minutes before 8 o'clock, so we told you we'd get you out by 8 o'clock. Do we have any other questions here, or do we have any more? Okay. Give a round of, oh, sorry.
I just want to make some editorial comments. Todd, you got 30 pills because you're male. Males are horrible whiners about pain. Your doctors don't want to hear from you. Okay, and education is not necessarily key. All these addicts, they said, I knew. And I went back to it. It's a switch in your brain. And once that switch gets flipped, it's hard to get out of it. If you can keep people from starting, that's one thing. But education per se is not going to get it. And so I just tell people all the time, some things you just can't try in life.
Well, and I do want to end with asking if you just real briefly, on a hopeful note, are you optimistic from what you're seeing out there that in our state that we are adjusting and are heading in the right direction in handling this difficult problem that folks may know? Let's start off with you.
Yeah, I absolutely see hope, and it's part of where I'm positioned. But I get to work with people that come in that recognize they have a problem. And I think that's part of where you start, and that's why other people are so helpful, helping you see you have that problem. But walking through recovery with them, yeah, there's a lot of hope out there. But it's not hope in isolation. It's hope with that group of people that say to work through it with you.
Give our panel a round of applause. Thank each of you for being here, participating and providing this information. I know you'll mind saying a few more minutes if somebody has a specific question. Thank you for Facebook live streaming this, and hopefully that was helpful for everybody else out there.